Arizona Territory, December 1883. A mountain man was riding home after 3 days of hunting in the high country. He didn't know that stopping on that particular night would change 2 lives forever. The question wasn't whether he could save the girl. It was whether she'd find the courage to save herself. The snow fell thick and fast across the Mogollon Rim, turning the world into a white void where earth and sky became one. The wind howled like a living thing, angry and relentless, driving needles of ice into anything foolish enough to be caught outside. Most men would have pushed on, head down, thinking only of reaching shelter. But Ezekiel Thornwood wasn't most men. He sat astride his Appaloosa, Ghost, with the stillness of a man who'd learned patience in the hardest school there was. 7 years living alone in these mountains had taught him to read the land like other men read newspapers. Every sound, every shift in the wind, every nervous flick of his horse's ears carried meaning. And right now, Ghost was telling him something was wrong. The horse stopped without being asked, planted his hooves in the deepening snow, and refused to move forward. His ears swiveled toward a dark shape in the distance. The Red Feather place. Ezekiel had passed it 100 times in 7 years, never stopping. Other people's business was other people's business. A man who wanted to be left alone had to extend the same courtesy. But Ghost kept staring, kept that low, nervous sound rumbling in his throat. Ezekiel's hand went to the rifle across his saddle. 3 rabbits hung from his belt, frozen solid in the bitter cold. He'd been looking forward to a hot meal and a warm fire. Instead, he found himself turning Ghost toward the Red Feather barn, his instincts screaming that something wasn't right. The barn door came into view through the swirling snow, and there, crumpled against it like a broken doll, was a hand, small, female. The fingers were moving, just barely, clawing at the wood with what had to be the last reserves of strength. Jesus Christ. Ezekiel was off his horse before conscious thought caught up with action. His boots crunched through the snow as he ran. The hand belonged to a woman, young. Her skin had that gray-blue cast that meant she was minutes from death. Her hair, black as a raven's wing, had frozen into icy ropes. Her lips were purple. She wore nothing but a thin cotton dress, soaked through and frozen stiff. He recognized her. Ayanna Redfeather, the half-Apache girl everyone in Prescott whispered about. The one respectable folks crossed the street to avoid. She was dying. Ezekiel yanked off his fur-lined coat, heavy with the smell of wood smoke and leather, and wrapped it around her. She was light as kindling when he picked her up. Her body was rigid, locked in the position she'd held against the door. How long had she been out here? 3 hours? 4? Stay with me, girl. He threw her across Ghost's saddle and swung up behind her, pulling her against his chest. The horse needed no urging. Ghost knew the way home, and he knew it fast. The girl's eyes fluttered open once during that desperate ride. Dark eyes, brown like creek stones, glazed with cold and terror. She tried to speak. The words came out in Apache, a language Ezekiel knew only fragments of. Shidiji. She kept saying it. Shidiji. I don't speak Apache, he told her, his voice rough from disuse. But I know you're fighting. Keep fighting. Her hand found his arm, gripped it with surprising strength. Her lips moved again, this time in English. Don't take me back. I won't. You're safe now. It took 15 minutes to reach his cabin, though it felt like 15 hours. Smoke rose from the chimney. Rosa Martinez, the woman who came 3 times a week to cook and clean, must have stayed late because of the storm. Thank God for small mercies. Rosa's face appeared in the doorway before they'd even stopped. She was a round woman, gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, with the kind of face that had seen too much hardship to be shocked by one more tragedy. But even she gasped when she saw what Ezekiel carried. Dios mío, that's the Red Feather girl. What happened? Someone locked her out in a blizzard to die. Rosa's expression went from shock to fury in the space of a heartbeat, but she didn't waste time with questions. She grabbed blankets from the chest by the door and spread them by the fire. Ezekiel laid Ayanna down as gently as he could, trying not to jostle her frozen limbs. Rosa was already heating water, her movements quick and efficient. The girl's eyes opened again. She looked around the cabin with the wariness of a trapped animal. Her gaze landed on Ezekiel and she flinched. He held up both hands, staying well back. "Name's Ezekiel Thornwood. Folks call me Zeke. You're in my cabin. You're safe here." "Why?" Her voice was barely a whisper, raw and broken. "Why did you save me?" It was the kind of question that had a dozen complicated answers. Because leaving you there would make me no better than whoever put you there. Because 7 years ago I rode away from a fight and I've regretted it every day since. Because sometimes a man gets tired of doing nothing. But he gave her the simple answer. Because leaving you there would make me no better than whoever put you there. Rosa brought over a bowl of soup, rich beef broth that steamed in the cold air. She tried to hand it to Ayanna, but the girl's hands shook so badly she couldn't hold the bowl. Soup slopped over the rim, burning her fingers. She made a small sound of frustration and pulled her hands back. Ezekiel cleared his throat. "I can help. If you want." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. He'd skinned deer and dressed elk and done 100 delicate tasks that required steady hands. But somehow, lifting that spoon to this girl's lips felt like the hardest thing he'd ever done. His hands, big as bear paws and scarred from years of rough work, looked ridiculous holding that small wooden spoon. The first attempt went poorly. Soup dribbled down her chin. She tried to smile, and he felt something crack in his chest. "Never was good at delicate work," he muttered. "I can see that." It was the smallest joke, barely there, but it was the first human sound she'd made that wasn't pain or fear. And somehow that mattered more than it should have. Rosa watched them with sharp eyes, missing nothing. She'd known Ezekiel for 3 years now, since he'd saved her grandson from drowning in the spring floods. She cleaned his cabin and cooked his meals, and never asked why a man who was clearly educated chose to live like a hermit in the mountains. That kind of discretion was rare and valuable. Now she bustled around the cabin, heating more water, finding dry clothes, creating warmth and order from chaos. All the while, she kept up a running commentary in Spanish mixed with English, talking to fill the silence because silence was too heavy for a night like this. Ayanna drank 3 bowls of soup. Color started returning to her lips. Her hands stopped shaking quite so badly, but her eyes never lost that hunted look, that expectation of the next blow. When she could finally speak without her teeth chattering, she looked around the cabin properly. It wasn't what most people expected of a mountain man's place. Books lined one wall, leather-bound volumes that spoke of education and refinement. A guitar hung near the fireplace, its wood worn smooth by years of use. Animal hides covered the floor, but they were tanned and cared for with obvious skill. "You're not a normal mountain man," she said. "Used to be Army Scout. Got tired of taking orders that didn't make sense. Been up here 7 years. Running away?" He met her eyes directly. No flinching, no shame. Healing. "Different thing." Rosa snorted from across the room. "He's the best man I know, just not good at talking. Rosa talks enough for both of us." It was another small joke, another crack in the ice. Ayanna's lips twitched, almost a smile. The night deepened. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the mountain. Inside, the fire crackled and warmth gradually chased away the worst of the cold. Rosa made up a bed in Ezekiel's room, the only bedroom in the small cabin. She raised an eyebrow at him and he nodded. He'd sleep by the fire. Let the girl have privacy and safety. Before Rosa left, wrapped in her own heavy coat for the walk to her grandson's cabin a 1/4 mile down the mountain, she gripped Ezekiel's arm. "You did good tonight, very good. But tomorrow, people will talk. You know this, yes? Let them talk. The girl's reputation matters less than the girl's life." Rosa smiled, squeezed his arm once more, and disappeared into the storm. Alone with Ayanna, Ezekiel felt suddenly awkward. The cabin seemed too small. He was too big, Too rough. Too much. He busied himself banking the fire, checking the door, doing all the small tasks that filled a solitary life. Mr. Thornwood? Just Zeke. Why did she do it? Her voice was small, lost. My stepmother. Why did she want me dead? He had theories. Greed was usually at the root of such things, but he wasn't about to share theories with a girl who'd nearly died in the snow. I don't know, but we'll find out. Will we? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know who she is? Victoria Ashford Redfeather. She came from Boston society. She has money, connections, the respect of every important person in Prescott. I'm just a half-breed girl nobody wants around. Who's going to believe me? I will. 2 words, simple, but they landed between them like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. Ayanna looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded, once, and disappeared into the bedroom. Ezekiel lay down by the fire, but sleep didn't come easy. He kept seeing that small hand clawing at the barn door, kept imagining what would have happened if Ghost hadn't stopped. If he'd ridden past, if he'd minded his own business like he'd done for 7 years. Some things a man couldn't ignore. Some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Morning came cold and bright. The storm had blown itself out during the night, leaving the world buried under 3 feet of fresh snow. Ezekiel woke to find Ayanna already up, standing by the window, wrapped in one of Rosa's borrowed shawls. She was looking down at the Red Feather Ranch in the valley below. Smoke rose from its chimneys. Life going on as normal. He made coffee, strong and black the way he liked it, offered her a cup. She took it with both hands, as if the warmth was more important than the drink itself. Rosa arrived with the dawn, as he knew she would. She brought fresh bread and eggs, practical things. But more importantly, she brought news. The town is talking, she said without preamble. Victoria Ashford Redfeather went to Sheriff Miller last night, said her stepdaughter had a fit of madness, destroyed property, and ran out into the storm. She's very worried, very upset. The whole town feels sorry for her. Ayanna's face went carefully blank. Of course they do. Rosa crossed to her, took her hands. Mija, what really happened? I broke a vase. It was an accident. My hands were shaking after 14 hours of work. The vase was ceramic, made in Mexico, the only thing my mother left me. Victoria said I did it on purpose, said I was always trying to hurt her. She grabbed me by the hair and threw me outside, locked the barn so I couldn't shelter with the animals, locked the house so I couldn't get back in. Then she sat by the fire and watched me freeze. The words came out flat, emotionless. Ezekiel recognized that tone. He'd used it himself when talking about things that hurt too much to feel. Rosa's face hardened. That woman. I always knew she was cold, but this? She's smart too. Ayanna's voice was stronger now, more focused. If I go back, she'll say I'm unstable. She'll say my Apache blood makes me dangerous. She'll have me declared unfit. And everyone will believe her because I'm half Apache and she's white and refined and respectable. Ezekiel set down his coffee cup. What do you think we should do? Ayanna turned from the window, surprise clear on her face. You're asking me? You know her better than anyone. Your move. She stared at him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. The hunted look faded, replaced by something sharper. Calculating. The will. My father, William Redfeather, died 5 years ago. Victoria says he left her as my guardian until I'm 25 or married. But my father never trusted her. He told me once, right before he died, that I'd be taken care of, that the land would be mine. You think she forged the will? I know she did. My father had his will witnessed by Dr. Samuel Hayes. The doctor would know the truth. Rosa clapped her hands together. Eso es. We find Dr. Hayes. We make him tell the truth. It's not that simple. Ayanna's shoulders slumped. Victoria has the will locked in my father's safe. She has connections. She has money. We have nothing but my word against hers. Ezekiel stood. Then we'll get more than your word. Rosa, you stay with her. I'm going to Prescott. You can't just—" "I can, and I will." He pulled on his coat, checked his rifle. "Used to track men through worse terrain than this. I'll find out what Victoria's planning, and I'll find Dr. Hayes." Ayanna crossed to him, moving fast. "Be careful. She's not just cruel. She's clever, and she's dangerous when cornered. I've dealt with dangerous before, not like her, not like someone who smiles while they twist the knife." He looked down at her. She barely came up to his shoulder, but there was steel in her spine, fire in her eyes. This girl had survived 5 years under Victoria's roof, had survived a night that should have killed her. She was stronger than she looked. "I'll be careful. You stay here. Stay warm. Stay safe." The ride down to Prescott took an hour. Ghost picked his way carefully through the deep snow, following the trail by instinct more than sight. The town came into view slowly, a collection of wooden buildings huddled against the cold. Smoke rose from dozens of chimneys. People moved along the main street, bundled against the weather. Ezekiel hadn't been to town in 3 months. He preferred it that way. Towns meant people, and people meant complications. But some things couldn't be avoided. He tied Ghost outside the blacksmith's forge. Isaiah Blackwood was hammering a horseshoe, his dark skin gleaming with sweat despite the cold. He looked up as Ezekiel approached, and his face split into a wide grin. "Zeke, haven't seen you since summer. What brings you down from your mountain?" "Need information. You heard about the Red Feather girl?" Isaiah's smile faded. "Heard she went crazy. Ran off into the storm. Victoria's beside herself with worry, or so everyone says." "That's not what happened," Ezekiel told him. "Quick, economical, just the facts." Isaiah set down his hammer with a thud. "That woman locked her stepdaughter out to die?" "Yes." "And you found her?" "Yes." Isaiah whistled low. "Zeke, you know what this means? The whole town's going to be talking. A half Apache girl spending the night at your cabin? Let them talk. Right now I need to find Dr. Hayes. You know where he is?" "Saloon, probably. Man's been drinking heavy since his wife passed last year." Isaiah paused. "But Zeke, you're walking into something big here. Victoria Ashford. Red Feather has half the town in her pocket. Judge Morrison, Sheriff Miller, even the Reverend. You go against her, you're going against all of them. Then I guess I'm going against all of them." Isaiah studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. But you don't do this alone. I'm with you. You don't even know the girl. Don't have to. Know you. And I know if you're willing to come down from that mountain after 7 years, it's because something's worth fighting for." The saloon was half empty at midday. A few men nursed drinks at scattered tables, their faces showing the wear of hard lives and harder winters. Dr. Samuel Hayes sat in the corner, a bottle of whiskey at his elbow. He was 62 but looked older, his white hair wild, his hands trembling slightly as he poured another drink. Ezekiel sat down across from him without asking permission. "Doc, need to talk." Dr. Hayes looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Thornwood, thought you'd given up on civilization." "Had." "Circumstances changed." He leaned forward, keeping his voice low. "William Redfeather's will. You witnessed it?" The doctor's hands went still. His eyes sharpened, suddenly less drunk than they'd appeared a moment ago. "Why are you asking?" "Because his daughter's alive." "Barely. And Victoria tried to change that last night." The story came out again, this time with more details. The barn door, the frozen hands, the clear intent to kill. Dr. Hayes set down his glass with careful precision. "William left everything to Ayanna. No guardianship, no conditions. I witnessed that will myself in August of 1878, right here in this saloon. William wanted me as witness because he didn't trust the lawyers in town, thought they were too friendly with Victoria. Can you testify to that?" "I can try. But Zeke, Victoria has the will locked up. The one she shows people is different. It names her as guardian until Ayanna turns 25 or marries. She's shown it to half the town." My word against a legal document, what good does that do? Depends on the document. Who notarized Victoria's version? Judge Henderson. Henderson's been dead 3 years. Dr. Hayes went very still. Say that again. Judge Henderson died in 1880. Heart failure. I was tracking a wounded elk near his property when they carried his body out. So if Victoria's will was notarized in 1881 like she claims, then she forged it. The doctor stood abruptly. We need to see Sheriff Miller. Now. They found the sheriff outside his office talking to a group of concerned citizens. He was a weak man, Ezekiel had always thought, well-meaning but spineless, the kind who'd rather keep the peace than rock the boat. The crowd parted as Ezekiel and Dr. Hayes approached. Several people gasped. Whether at the sight of the hermit mountain man or the town drunk, Ezekiel couldn't tell. Probably both. Sheriff Miller's face went carefully neutral. Mr. Thornwood. Dr. Hayes, what can I do for you, gentlemen? Before Ezekiel could speak, a carriage rolled up. Expensive. Black lacquered wood with brass fittings. A liveried driver sat atop, and when the door opened, Victoria Ashford Redfeather stepped out. She was 42 but looked younger, her blonde hair perfectly arranged, her black mourning dress cut in the latest fashion. Everything about her spoke of wealth, refinement, civilization. She smiled when she saw the crowd, a practiced expression of gentle concern. Then her eyes landed on Ezekiel, and the smile froze. Mr. Thornwood. Her voice was sweet as honey laced with arsenic. What a surprise to see you in town. It's been so long. Mrs. Ashford Redfeather, I believe you have something of mine. She stepped closer, flanked by 2 men Ezekiel didn't recognize. Hired muscle by the look of them. My stepdaughter needs medical attention. She's unwell. Mentally unwell. I'm sure you understand. I understand she's well enough to tell me you locked her out to die. The crowd went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Victoria's expression shifted subtly. The warmth drained from her eyes, though her smile remained. Poor dear. The Apache blood makes her unstable. She has fits, delusions. Last night she destroyed a treasured family heirloom in one of her rages. I tried to calm her, but she ran out into the storm. I couldn't stop her. She's been like this since she was a child. Wild. Uncontrollable. That's a lie. Dr. Hayes stepped forward, swaying slightly. William told me Victoria only married him for his land. He never trusted her. Never would have left her as guardian. Victoria turned to him with a pitying look. Dr. Hayes, everyone knows about your drinking. It's very sad, but we can't trust the word of a man who can barely stand straight. The crowd murmured. Several people nodded. Ezekiel felt the situation slipping away. Victoria was good, very good. She knew exactly how to play to her audience. Sheriff Miller cleared his throat. Mr. Thornwood, Mrs. Ashford Redfeather has filed a formal complaint. You're harboring her ward without permission. That's kidnapping under territorial law. I saved her life. Then bring her to town for medical examination. If Dr. Jameson declares her fit, she can choose where to go. But hiding her? That's a crime, sir. Victoria smiled again, warmer now. That's all I want, just to make sure my poor stepdaughter is cared for. Surely you understand, Mr. Thornwood? A young woman, alone with a strange man? Her reputation. She let the implication hang in the air. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Several women whispered behind their hands. Ezekiel felt rage building in his chest, hot and dangerous. But rage wouldn't help. He forced himself to think clearly. Fine, I'll bring her tomorrow. Public examination. Everyone in town watches. Every question asked in front of witnesses. Deal? Victoria's smile slipped for just a fraction of a second. She didn't like this. Public meant less control. But she couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. Deal. Tomorrow at noon. In the church, where the whole community can see that I only want what's best for my stepdaughter. She swept back to her carriage, the hired men following. As the door closed, Ezekiel caught one more glimpse of her face. The mask had dropped completely. What looked back at him was cold calculation and absolute certainty of victory. Isaiah appeared at his elbow. "That didn't go the way you wanted." "No. But it went the way I expected." "What now?" "Now we get proof. Real proof. Something even she can't talk her way out of." They rode back to the cabin in silence. Ghost seemed to sense his master's dark mood and moved carefully, as if treading on glass. The sun was setting by the time they reached the small clearing where Ezekiel had built his life 7 years ago. Rosa met them at the door. Her face told him everything he needed to know before she spoke. "She's planning something. I can feel it." She kept looking out the window, watching the trail. "She thinks Victoria will come. She might." Ezekiel tied Ghost to the hitching post. "But not yet. Victoria's too smart for that. She'll use the law first, make it all look proper and legal." Inside, Ayanna sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets. She looked up as they entered, and Ezekiel saw the fear in her eyes. But underneath that fear was something else. Determination. Steel. "What happened?" he told her. "All of it." She nodded slowly when he finished. "I told you. She's clever. Now the whole town thinks you're the criminal, and she's the concerned guardian. Tomorrow we change that. We go to town. We let them examine you. We tell your story in front of everyone. It won't work. She's had 5 years to build her reputation. I've had 5 years of people looking at me like I'm something dirty. Words won't change that. Then we need more than words." Ezekiel sat across from her. "The will. The original one your father signed. It's in his office, isn't it? In the safe. 3rd shelf. But Victoria keeps that room locked. She has the only key, and she has men watching the house now. We'd never get in. Maybe. Maybe not." He looked at Isaiah. "You still remember how to create a distraction?" Isaiah grinned. "Been a while, but yeah. I remember." Ayanna leaned forward. "You want to break into my father's house?" "I want to get proof. The kind that can't be explained away. It's dangerous. If we're caught, if we do nothing, you go back under her control tomorrow. She'll have you declared insane, locked away somewhere, and she'll have won." The fire crackled. Outside, darkness gathered between the trees. Ayanna stared into the flames for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "All right, I'll help. I know the house better than anyone. I know which floorboards creak, which windows stick, where the safe is hidden." Rosa crossed herself. "Dios mío, this is crazy. Maybe, but sometimes crazy is all you've got left." They spent the next hour planning. Ayanna drew the layout of the house from memory, her hand sure despite the trembling she couldn't quite control. The office was on the 2nd floor, west side. One window, usually locked, but the latch was broken. Her father had never fixed it because he liked the fresh air. The safe was behind a painting of Ayanna's mother. Apache woman, beautiful and proud, captured in oils by a traveling artist 25 years ago. Victoria had hated that painting, hated that William kept it in his office, but she'd never dared remove it. "Combination," Ayanna said quietly. 4/12/59. The date I was born. Papa said it was the happiest day of his life. He and my mother had twin girls, me and my sister Helona. Had? Helona died of measles when we were 8. My mother died of a broken heart 2 years later. Or, that's what people said. Really, it was her heart giving out. But maybe they were right. Maybe it's the same thing. The room went quiet. Even Isaiah, who'd seen his share of tragedy, looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry," Ezekiel said. "Don't be. I had them longer than some people get. And Papa loved us enough for 3 parents. He married Victoria because he was lonely, because he thought we needed a mother. He didn't realize what she really was until it was too late. Did he change the will before he died? No. He died suddenly, Stroke, the doctor said. But he'd told me a week before that he was going to change some things, that he didn't trust Victoria anymore. Then he was gone and she had control of everything. She stood, moved to the window. I was 19, still in shock from losing him. She was kind at first, gentle, said she'd take care of me, guide me. It took 6 months before the mask started slipping. By then she'd gotten the whole town believing I was troubled, difficult, that she was a saint for putting up with me. Ezekiel recognized that tactic. Isolate the victim, control the narrative, make sure no one believes them when they finally speak up. He'd seen it in the army. Officers who abused their power, who made sure anyone who might report them was already discredited. Not this time, he said. This time people are going to listen. They left at midnight. Ezekiel, Ayanna, Isaiah, and Dr. Hayes, who'd insisted on coming despite his age. 4 people on 4 horses, moving through the darkness with only starlight to guide them. The snow muffled the horses' hooves, turning the night into a hushed cathedral of white and black. The red feather house loomed in the distance, lit from within. Too many lights for the middle of the night. Victoria was awake, waiting. Isaiah circled around to the barn. His job was simple but crucial. Create noise, draw attention, give the others time to get in and out. He'd brought a handful of firecrackers left over from the 4th of July celebration. Not enough to cause real damage, but plenty to cause panic. Ezekiel, Ayanna, and Dr. Hayes approached from the west. The office window was 15 feet up, but a trellis offered handholds. Ezekiel went first, testing each piece of wood before putting his weight on it. The trellis groaned but held. The window was indeed unlocked. It slid open with barely a whisper. Ezekiel pulled himself through, then reached down for Ayanna. She climbed with the ease of someone who'd done it before. Dr. Hayes stayed below, keeping watch. Inside, the office was exactly as Ayanna had described. Neat, orderly. The painting of her mother dominated one wall, a beautiful woman with Ayanna's eyes, staring out across the years. Ayanna's hand trembled as she touched the frame. "Mama, we need to hurry." She nodded, pushed the painting aside. The safe was small, iron, built into the wall. Her fingers found the dial by touch. 4, 12, 59. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was everything. The will, exactly as Dr. Hayes had described. Legal papers, deeds to the property, account books showing 5 years of financial transactions. And at the bottom, an envelope addressed to Ayanna in William Redfeather's distinctive hand. She picked up the envelope with shaking hands, opened it, pulled out a single sheet of paper. "My dearest Aya, if you're reading this, I am gone. I know Victoria will try to take everything from you. She married me for land, not love. I was a fool, but I am not fool enough to trust her with your future. Fight for what is yours. You are your mother's daughter. Brave, wise, unbreakable. I love you. Papa." Tears streamed down Ayanna's face, silent and uncontrolled. Ezekiel looked away, giving her what privacy he could in the moment. Outside, Isaiah's firecrackers went off. Pop, pop, pop like gunshots. Shouts erupted from elsewhere in the house. Footsteps pounded on stairs. Time to go. Ezekiel grabbed the will, the ledgers, everything that might serve as evidence. Ayanna clutched her father's letter to her chest like a talisman. They moved to the window and stopped. Victoria stood in the doorway, a small pistol in her hand. Behind her, 2 men with rifles. Her face was calm, almost serene. "I knew you'd come here eventually. William's little half-breed daughter, always snooping where she doesn't belong." Ayanna stepped forward, holding the will. "This is the real will. You forged the other one." Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "And who's going to believe you? A crazy girl and a hermit? Please." Dr. Hayes climbed through the window behind them, moving with surprising speed for his age. "I'll believe her. I witnessed this will. I know it's real." Victoria's smile didn't waver. An old drunk whose testimony won't stand up in any court. Ezekiel noticed her finger tightening on the trigger. She was going to shoot. Not him, probably. Him she needed alive to play the villain. But Ayanna? Ayanna she wanted dead. He moved without thinking, putting himself between Victoria and the girl. You going to kill us all, Victoria? In front of witnesses? Going to be hard to explain away 3 bodies. Who said anything about witnesses? The men behind her raised their rifles. This was it. The moment when everything went wrong or everything went right. Ezekiel tensed, calculating distances, angles, chances of survival. Drop your weapons. Now! The voice came from behind Victoria. Marshal Jim Cooper stepped into view, badge gleaming in the lamplight. Behind him, 3 deputies with drawn guns. Victoria's face went white, then red. Marshal, this is a private matter. Attempted murder is never a private matter, ma'am. Dr. Hayes sent word to me this afternoon, told me everything. I've been watching your house for hours, waiting to see what you'd do. His eyes were hard as flint. And now I know. This is ridiculous. These people broke into my home, after you tried to murder your stepdaughter and forge legal documents. He nodded to his deputies. Cuff her. Victoria's mask finally shattered completely. You can't do this to me. I'm a respectable woman. That girl is nothing. She's a half-breed savage who doesn't deserve anything. The room went silent. Even the men who'd been ready to shoot for her took a step back. Victoria Ashford Redfeather, Marshal Cooper said formally. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. You'll be held in the Prescott jail until trial. As the deputies led her away, she looked back at Ayanna one last time. You'll never belong here. Never. They'll always see you as other, always less. Ayanna met her eyes steadily. Maybe, but at least I'll be free. The ride back to the cabin felt like a dream. Ezekiel kept expecting something else to go wrong, some other shoe to drop, but the night remained quiet, peaceful even. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human drama. At the cabin, Rosa had coffee waiting. She took one look at their faces and pulled Ayanna into a fierce hug. Mija, you're safe now. Are we? Ayanna looked at the will in her hands. There's still tomorrow, the town hearing. Victoria will have lawyers. She'll fight this. Let her fight. Ezekiel poured coffee for everyone. This time we have proof. This time the truth comes out in front of everyone. No more whispers, no more lies. Dr. Hayes raised his cup. To the truth. May it set us all free. They drank together as dawn painted the eastern sky gold and pink. Outside, the world was waking up. Inside, 4 people who'd started as strangers had become something more. Allies, friends, family of a sort. Ayanna stood by the window, watching the sun rise over her father's land. Ezekiel came to stand beside her, close but not touching. Thank you, she said quietly, for stopping, for seeing me, for believing me. He thought about the 7 years he'd spent running from the world, 7 years of solitude and silence, 7 years of telling himself he was better off alone. He'd been wrong. Thank you for letting me help. She smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, chased away the shadows, made her look young and hopeful and alive. Tomorrow they'd face the town. Tomorrow they'd fight for justice. Tomorrow was uncertain and dangerous and full of risk. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, neither of them was alone. And that, Ezekiel thought, was enough. The fire crackled. The coffee steamed. Outside, the snow glittered under the rising sun, beautiful and clean and new. And in that moment, anything seemed possible. Even hope. Even justice. Even a future worth fighting for. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the snow into a field of diamonds. Inside the cabin, 4 people sat around a rough wooden table, planning for a battle none of them wanted, but all of them knew was necessary. Rosa brought more coffee, fresh bread, scrambled eggs, practical fuel for what lay ahead. Ayanna picked at her food, her appetite gone. She'd changed into one of Rosa's dresses, a simple blue cotton thing that made her look younger than her 24 years. Respectable, civilized, everything the town needed to see to believe her story. Ezekiel watched her struggle with the food and felt a surge of protective anger. This girl shouldn't have to perform respectability to deserve basic human decency. But the world was what it was, not what it should be. "You need to eat," he said quietly. "Long day ahead." "I know." She forced down another bite. "I just keep thinking about all those people, all those faces staring at me. Judging. Let them stare. You'll tell the truth. That's all you can do. And if the truth isn't enough, then we find another way." He met her eyes across the table. "I'm not letting you go back to her, whatever it takes." Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. "The hearing is at noon in the church. Judge Morrison will preside. He's fair, mostly. Not in Victoria's pocket the way Sheriff Miller is. But he's also a man of his time. He'll want everything documented. Legal. By the book." "We have the original will," Isaiah pointed out. "We have the doctor's testimony. We have the letter from her father. What more does he need? Proof that Victoria's will is forged." Dr. Hayes rubbed his tired eyes. "Right now we have 2 documents. Both look official. Without proof that hers is fake, it becomes my word against hers. And she's spent 5 years building credibility while I've spent 5 years drinking myself into an early grave." The room fell silent. Outside, Ghost whinnied softly, sensing the tension through the cabin walls. "Judge Henderson," Ayanna said suddenly, "the man who supposedly notarized Victoria's will. When exactly did he die?" "March of 1880. Dr. Hayes's eyes sharpened. "I was there. Signed the death certificate myself. And Victoria's will is dated October 1881. Ezekiel stood, began pacing. She had a dead man notarize her document. "That's not just fraud. That's stupid." "Not stupid," Ayanna corrected. "Arrogant. She never thought anyone would check. Why would they? She's a respectable white woman. I'm a half-breed nobody. Who'd believe me if I questioned her?" Rosa crossed herself. "We need proof of when Judge Henderson died. Official proof. I can get that." Dr. Hayes stood, steadier than he'd been in years. "The county keeps death records. I'll ride to the courthouse, get a certified copy. That puts Victoria's will in front of a man who'd been dead 18 months when he supposedly signed it." "Good." Ezekiel stopped pacing. "Isaiah, you come with me into town. I want eyes on Victoria. Find out what she's planning." "And me?" Ayanna's voice was small but determined. "What do I do?" "You stay here with Rosa. You rest. You prepare." He softened his tone. "This afternoon you'll need to stand in front of the whole town and tell your story. That takes strength. Save it for when it matters." She nodded, though he could see the frustration in her eyes. She wanted to fight, to act, to do something other than wait. He understood that. He'd spent 7 years hiding in these mountains, and the waiting had nearly killed him. But some battles required patience. The ride into Prescott took longer than usual. The snow was deep, the trail treacherous. Ezekiel and Isaiah rode in silence for most of the journey, each man lost in his own thoughts. Halfway down the mountain, Isaiah finally spoke. "You know this is going to change everything. After today you can't go back to your hermit life. You'll be involved, connected, part of things." "I know. And you're all right with that?" Ezekiel thought about the question. 7 years ago, he'd watched his commanding officer order the massacre of an Apache village. Women, children, elders, unarmed, unthreatening, simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd protested, been threatened, told that if he said anything he'd be court-martialed for cowardice. So he'd run, deserted, came to these mountains and tried to forget, tried to convince himself that staying uninvolved was the same as being innocent. Ayanna's frozen hand clawing at that barn door had taught him otherwise. "I'm all right with it," he said finally. "Man can't hide forever." Isaiah grinned. "Good, because you're going to need friends for this. Victoria's got money and influence. We've got stubbornness and the truth. Not sure which is stronger. We're about to find out." Prescott was bustling when they arrived. Word had spread about the hearing. People lined the streets, talking in clusters. Some looked curious. Some looked judgmental. A few looked sympathetic. Ezekiel tied Ghost outside Isaiah's forge, and the two men split up. Isaiah would gather information, listen to gossip, find out what Victoria had been telling people. Ezekiel had a different mission. He found Dr. Hayes at the courthouse, arguing with a clerk. The clerk was young, officious, clearly enjoying his small power. "Sir, these records are not available to the public without proper authorization. I'm a physician. I signed this death certificate. I have every right to request a copy. Nevertheless, the rules are quite clear." Ezekiel stepped up to the counter. His size alone made the clerk take a step back. "How much?" "I beg your pardon?" "How much to make the rules less clear?" The clerk's face flushed. "Sir, are you attempting to bribe a government official?" "I'm attempting to obtain a public document in a timely manner. If that requires compensation for your time and trouble, so be it." The clerk glanced around nervously. $20. It was highway robbery. Ezekiel paid it anyway. Some things were worth more than money. 5 minutes later, they walked out with a certified copy of Judge Henderson's death certificate. March 15, 1880, official seal, signed by Dr. Samuel Hayes. "That clerk is going to tell Victoria we requested this," Dr. Hayes said. "Let him." Ezekiel folded the document carefully and tucked it inside his coat. "She already knows we're coming for her. This just tells her we're serious." They met Isaiah at the saloon. He was nursing a beer and looking grim. "Bad news," he said without preamble. "Victoria's been busy. She's convinced half the town that Ayanna is dangerous, unstable, that you, Zeke, are some kind of predator who took advantage of a vulnerable girl." "Of course she has." Ezekiel sat heavily. "What else?" "She's brought in a lawyer from Tucson, man named Pemberton. Real slick character. He's been showing people the will Victoria has, telling everyone it's all legal and proper, making her look like a saint, and us like villains." Dr. Hayes sighed. "This is going to be harder than I thought." Isaiah leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "There's more. I talked to Maria, one of the women who works at the Red Feather House. She says Victoria's planning something. Wouldn't say what, but she's scared. Said if things go wrong today, she's leaving Prescott and never coming back. What kind of something? Don't know. But Maria's not easily spooked. Whatever Victoria's planning, it's bad." She heard Victoria talking to a man with a scarred face. Called him Cobb. Victoria was counting out gold coins, telling him to handle the Apache problem before it gets to trial. Ezekiel checked his pocket watch. 11:30, half an hour until the hearing. We need to get back to the cabin. Bring Ayanna to town. Make sure she's protected." They rode hard, pushing the horses as fast as the snow would allow. Ezekiel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that they'd missed something crucial. The cabin came into view. Smoke rose from the chimney. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Ezekiel was off Ghost before the horse had fully stopped. He burst through the door, hand on his pistol. Rosa sat calmly by the fire, knitting. She looked up with mild surprise. "Ezekiel, you're back early. Is something wrong? Where's Ayanna?" "Getting dressed. She wanted to look proper for town." He relaxed slightly, felt foolish for the panic. Isaiah and Dr. Hayes came in behind him, bringing cold air and snow. "False alarm," Isaiah said. "We're all just on edge." Ayanna emerged from the bedroom a moment later, and Ezekiel's breath caught. She'd done something to her hair, pulled it back in a way that showed the fine bones of her face. The dress Rosa had given her fit better than he'd thought. She looked dignified, strong, beautiful. "Will this do?" She turned in a small circle, uncertain. "Will they see me as respectable enough? They'll see you as human. That's what matters." She smiled, small and nervous. "Thank you. For everything." I know this is more than you signed up for. I didn't sign up for anything. I just did what was right. That's more than most people would do. Then, most people need to do better. The ride to Prescott was tense. They formed a protective circle around Ayanna, with Ezekiel in front and Isaiah bringing up the rear. Dr. Hayes rode beside her, offering quiet words of encouragement. As they entered town, people stopped to stare. Whispers followed them like smoke. Ezekiel heard fragments. Shameful, savage blood. Poor Victoria. What kind of man? He ignored them all. Let them whisper. By the end of today, they'd know the truth. The church was packed. Every pew filled, people standing along the walls, pressing in at the doorways. Reverend Thomas Miller stood at the pulpit, looking uncomfortable with the transformation of his holy space into a courtroom. Judge Morrison sat behind a makeshift bench, his face grave and lined with the weight of responsibility. He was 60, gray-haired, known for being fair, but also for following the letter of the law with rigid precision. Victoria sat in the front row with her lawyer Pemberton. She wore black, as always, the perfect image of a grieving widow and concerned guardian. When she saw Ayanna enter, her face arranged itself into an expression of relief and worry. "Oh, Ayanna, thank God you're safe." She started to rise, reaching out. "Don't!" Ayanna's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "Don't pretend you care." The church fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. "Order. This is a hearing to determine the mental fitness of Miss Ayanna Redfeather and to review the custody arrangements established by her father's will." He looked at Ayanna. "Miss Redfeather, do you understand the proceedings?" "I do, Your Honor." "Do you wish to be represented by counsel?" "I'll represent myself, with these witnesses." She gestured to Ezekiel, Dr. Hayes, and Isaiah. "Very well." He turned to Victoria. "Mrs. Ashford Redfeather, you've filed a petition claiming that your stepdaughter is mentally unfit and requires continued guardianship. Present your case." Pemberton stood, smoothing his expensive suit. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. Miss Redfeather has a history of unstable behavior. 3 nights ago, in a fit of rage, she destroyed valuable family property. When my client attempted to calm her, Miss Redfeather fled into a blizzard. She then spent 3 nights alone with a strange man, Mr. Thornwood, a known recluse with no reputation in this community. He produced documents, laying them out with theatrical precision. Here is the will of William Redfeather, properly notarized, naming Mrs. Victoria Ashford Redfeather as guardian until Ayanna reaches 25 or marries. Here are affidavits from 3 townspeople attesting to Miss Redfeather's difficult temperament. And here is a medical opinion from Dr. Jameson stating that half Apache individuals often suffer from mental instability due to their mixed blood. Ezekiel's hands clenched into fists. That last part was pure racism dressed up in medical language. But several people in the crowd were nodding along. Judge Morrison examined the documents. "These appear to be in order. Miss Redfeather, how do you respond?" Ayanna stood. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. "That will is a forgery." Gasps rippled through the church. Pemberton laughed. "Your Honor, this is desperate nonsense. The will was notarized by Judge Henderson. Judge Henderson died in March of 1880. Dr. Hayes stood, holding up the death certificate. "Here is his official death record, which I signed myself. The will Mrs. Ashford Redfeather presents is dated October 1881. A dead man cannot notarize a document." The church erupted. People shouting, arguing, some demanding to see the death certificate, others calling it a fake. Judge Morrison banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in this court!" Pemberton's face had gone white, then red. He turned to Victoria, who sat frozen, her mask finally beginning to crack. "Your Honor," Victoria said, standing, "this is clearly a misunderstanding. Perhaps there was an error in the date. Clerical mistakes happen." 18-month errors? Dr. Hayes's voice was cold. "No, Victoria, you forged that will. You've been stealing from Ayanna for 5 years, and 3 nights ago you tried to kill her. This is slander." Victoria's voice rose, shrill now. "I demand this hearing be ended immediately. Show them." Ayanna's voice cut through the chaos. "Show them the real will." Ezekiel produced the document they'd taken from the safe. Judge Morrison held out his hand and Ezekiel brought it forward. The judge read in silence, his expression growing darker with each line. "This will, dated August 1878, leaves everything to Ayanna Redfeather with no conditions and no guardianship." He looked up at Victoria. "Mrs. Ashford Redfeather, do you have the original will you claim to possess?" "It's at home." "In my safe. Then we'll adjourn while you retrieve it." Victoria's eyes darted around the room, calculating. "I can't. There was a fire last night. My husband's office was damaged. The will may have been destroyed." "How convenient." Judge Morrison's voice was ice. "A fire the same night you knew we'd be examining these documents? Are you accusing me of arson?" Victoria's voice climbed higher. "I'm the victim here. This girl and her accomplices have broken into my home, stolen private documents, and now they're trying to frame me." She was losing control. Ezekiel could see it happening in real time, the careful facade crumbling. "Your Honor, if I may." An older woman stood in the back. Ezekiel didn't recognize her, but several people turned to look with respect. "I'm Catherine Henderson, widow of Judge Marcus Henderson. My husband died in 1880, as Dr. Hayes has testified. He never notarized any document for Victoria Ashford Redfeather. In fact, he despised her, called her a snake in silk skirts." Pemberton tried to interrupt. "This is hearsay. This is truth." Mrs. Henderson's voice was firm, "and I'll swear to it under oath." Judge Morrison looked from the documents to Victoria to Ayanna. His expression was troubled. "This is highly irregular, but the evidence suggests serious fraud. Mrs. Ashford Redfeather, I'm suspending your guardianship pending a full investigation." "You can't do this." Victoria stood, trembling with rage. "That girl doesn't deserve anything. She's not even fully white. Her mother was a savage, and she's no better." The mask was gone. What stood there now was pure venom. "Mrs. Ashford Redfeather," Judge Morrison said quietly. "Sit down." "No!" Victoria's voice echoed off the church walls. "I did everything for that land. Everything. William was a fool who threw away his life on an Apache whore. I married him. I endured him. I waited 5 years for that stupid girl to either grow up or die, and I will not be cheated out of what's rightfully mine." The church was silent. Even her own lawyer had backed away. Marshal Cooper stepped forward from where he'd been standing by the door. "Victoria Ashford Redfeather, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder." "You can't prove attempted murder. You locked your stepdaughter out in a blizzard." "That's attempted murder in my book." 2 deputies moved to flank her. Victoria looked around wildly, seeing no allies, no escape. For a moment, Ezekiel thought she might try to run. But where would she go? Everyone had seen. Everyone had heard. As they led her toward the door, she stopped in front of Ayanna. "You think you've won? You'll never belong here. They'll always see you as less. Always." Ayanna met her eyes without flinching. "Maybe, but at least I'll be free." Victoria laughed, bitter and broken, as the deputies took her away. Judge Morrison addressed the room. "I'm declaring the will dated August 1878 to be William Redfeather's true last testament. Ayanna Redfeather is the sole heir to the Redfeather estate. All transactions made by Mrs. Ashford Redfeather over the past 5 years will be reviewed for legitimacy." He banged his gavel. "This hearing is concluded." People began filing out, buzzing with conversation. Some looked at Ayanna with new respect, others with the same old prejudice, just slightly muted. But she stood tall, shoulders back, chin high. Outside the church, the winter sun was bright and cold. Ayanna stood on the steps, breathing deeply, as if tasting freedom for the first time in 5 years. Rosa appeared with a basket of food. "Come, you must eat. You must rest." But there was no rest yet. A woman approached, middle-aged, wearing an apron. Ayana, I'm Maria. I work at your house. Worked, I guess. She twisted her hands nervously. I'm sorry. I should have said something years ago. I saw what she did to you. The locked cellar. The missed meals. The bruises. I was afraid of losing my job. I was a coward. You weren't a coward. Ayana's voice was gentle. You were human. Fear makes cowards of us all. I'd like to keep working for you. If you'll have me. I can cook, clean, help rebuild. Whatever you need. Ayana looked at the woman's honest, tired face. Thank you, Maria. I'd like that. More people approached, some apologizing, some offering help, a few still keeping their distance, unwilling to fully accept. But the tide had shifted. The truth was out. Isaiah materialized at Ezekiel's elbow. Marshal Cooper wants to see you. Says it's important. They found the marshal at the jail, where Victoria sat in a cell, staring at nothing. Her expensive dress was already showing the signs of imprisonment, hem dragging in the dust, buttons askew. Thornwood. The marshal gestured him into the office. We've got a problem. What kind? Victoria had help. Silas Cobb, a hired gun from Tucson. He disappeared when we arrested her. I think he's planning to break her out. When? Don't know. But soon. The prison transport doesn't leave until next week. If he's going to make a move, it'll be in the next few days. Ezekiel felt the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. So we need to protect Ayana until Victoria's safely locked away in Yuma, and possibly after. Woman like that, she'll hold a grudge. Even from prison she could send someone. Then what do you suggest? Marshal Cooper leaned back in his chair. Take the girl somewhere safe, somewhere Victoria's people can't find her. Keep her there until the trial. Then we'll see. Where exactly do you think is safe? The Apache reservation. Her grandfather's people? Victoria's hired guns won't dare go there. It was a good suggestion. Maybe the only option. But Ezekiel knew what it meant for Ayana. She'd spent 5 years being told her Apache blood made her less. Going to the reservation would force her to confront that side of herself. To choose. I'll talk to her, he said. They found Ayana at the cabin, sitting at the table with the documents spread before her. Her father's will, his letter, the deed to the land, 5 years of stolen time, laid out in ink and paper. She looked up when they entered. Her eyes were red but dry. I've been reading Papa's letter, over and over. He knew. He knew what she was. He knew, Ezekiel confirmed. And he tried to protect you. He did protect me. She touched the paper gently. Even dead, he protected me. I just wish I'd known. I spent 5 years thinking maybe he had wanted her as my guardian. Maybe he hadn't trusted me after all. He trusted you with everything. Ayana looked around the cabin. This place, your home. You've given up so much to help me. A stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, wordless but profound. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something deeper than gratitude. Recognition, maybe. Two damaged people who'd found each other in the dark. Marshal Cooper thinks you should go to the reservation, Ezekiel said, breaking the moment, until Victoria's safely transported to prison. He says it's the only place her people won't follow. Ayana went very still. The reservation. Your grandfather's people. Red Sky Walker. I haven't been there in 9 years, not since Mama died. She stood, walked to the window. They didn't want me then. A half-breed girl, too white for the Apache, too Apache for the whites. Why would they want me now? Because you're family. Because you need them. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't know what it's like. Being between two worlds, belonging to neither. No, Ezekiel said quietly, but I know what it's like to run from who you are, to think that hiding is the same as healing. It's not. She turned to look at him. And going to the reservation will heal me? I don't know, but running from Victoria won't keep you safe forever. Sooner or later you have to stand your ground. And maybe that ground is with your mother's people." Ayanna was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Will you come with me? If you want me to." "I do." She met his eyes. "I'm not ready to do this alone." "You won't be alone." Dr. Hayes cleared his throat from the doorway where he'd been listening. "I'll come too. Your father was my friend. It's time I honored that friendship properly." "And me," Isaiah added. "Never been to an Apache reservation. Might be educational." Rosa appeared with more coffee. "Y yo también. Someone needs to make sure you all eat properly." Ayanna looked around at these people who'd become her family in the span of 3 days. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "Thank you, all of you." They left at dawn the next day, 5 people on 5 horses, riding toward the rising sun. The reservation was 20 miles east, over terrain that was treacherous even in good weather. The snow made it worse. But Ayanna rode with growing confidence, finding trails she'd known as a child. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget, the way the land rolled, the smell of juniper and sage, the particular quality of light that only existed in this part of Arizona. Halfway there, she began speaking in Apache, soft words, almost to herself. Ezekiel didn't understand them, but he understood their meaning. She was going home, not to the house where Victoria had tormented her, but to the place where her mother had been born, where she herself belonged. The reservation came into view as the sun reached its peak, a collection of traditional wickiups mixed with government-built wooden structures. Smoke rose from cook fires. Children played in the snow, their laughter carrying on the wind. Dogs barked, announcing the arrival of strangers. An old man emerged from the largest wickiup. He was tall despite his age, his back straight, his face carved by time and weather into something between stone and leather. His hair was white, hanging long past his shoulders. He wore a mixture of traditional Apache clothing and practical white man's goods, a visual representation of a people caught between worlds. He looked at Ayanna for a long moment. Then he spoke in Apache, his voice deep and resonant. Ayanna replied in the same language. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. The old man stepped forward and pulled her into an embrace. Ayanna broke then, the tears she'd been holding finally falling. She sobbed against his chest while he held her, speaking softly in Apache. Ezekiel felt like an intruder on this moment. But the old man's eyes found his over Ayanna's head. Dark eyes, sharp with intelligence and judgment. After a long moment, he released Ayanna and addressed Ezekiel in accented English. "I am Red Sky Walker, father of Nasha, grandfather of Ayanna. You are the one who saved her. Ezekiel Thornwood. And yes, you are also the soldier who refused to kill women and children at Cañon de los Embudos." Ezekiel's blood ran cold. "How do you know that? We remember all who showed mercy. We remember all who showed cruelty. You are remembered." He held out his hand. "You are welcome here." The handshake was firm, the grip of a man who'd lived through more hardship than Ezekiel could imagine and come out stronger for it. "Come." Red Sky Walker led them into the warmth of the wickiup. "There is food, there is fire, there is safety. We will talk." Inside, the space was larger than it appeared from outside, warm and surprisingly comfortable. Several people sat around the fire, older women, a few warriors, children peeking from behind adults. They all stared at Ayanna with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. Red Sky Walker spoke in Apache, gesturing to Ayanna. Whatever he said made the women smile. One of them, ancient and bent with age, shuffled forward and touched Ayanna's face with gnarled fingers. She spoke, her voice like wind through dry grass. "She says you look like your mother," Red Sky Walker translated. "She says Nasha would be proud." Ayanna couldn't speak. She could only nod. They ate together. Simple food, but plentiful. Roasted meat, cornbread, something that might have been stew. The women served them with quiet efficiency, their faces carefully neutral toward the outsiders. After the meal, Red Skywalker led Ezekiel outside, away from the others. They stood in the cold air, breath steaming. "The woman who hurt my granddaughter. What will happen to her? She'll go to prison. Probably hang for attempted murder." "Good." He was quiet for a moment. "My daughter Nasha loved a white man. Many of our people didn't understand, said she was betraying her blood. But William Redfeather was a good man. He respected our ways, learned our language, treated Nasha as an equal, not a possession. He sounds like a rare man. He was, which is why the white woman's betrayal cuts so deep. Nasha trusted her, died believing Ayanna would be cared for." Red Skywalker's hands clenched. "If I had known what Victoria was doing, I would have taken Ayanna back 5 years ago." "Why didn't you?" "Because Ayanna chose the white world. After Nasha died, she stopped speaking Apache, stopped wearing traditional clothes, tried to be what the white people wanted her to be. It broke my heart. But it was her choice. And now? Now she is running again. This time to us." Red Skywalker looked at him steadily. "The question is whether she is running from danger or running to her true self. Those are different things. I think she's trying to figure that out. Then we will help her, because that is what family does." They returned to the wickiup to find Ayanna dressed in traditional Apache clothing. One of the women must have given it to her. A deerskin dress, decorated with intricate beadwork. Her dark hair was braided, adorned with feathers. She looked like her mother's daughter in a way the white dress never allowed. She looked up as they entered, uncertain. "Is this all right?" "You look beautiful," Ezekiel said honestly. She smiled, tentative. "I feel strange, like I'm wearing someone else's skin." One of the women spoke in Apache. Red Skywalker translated. "She says you are not wearing someone else's skin. You are remembering your own." The next 3 days passed in a rhythm Ezekiel had never experienced. The reservation operated on different time, slower, more connected to the land and seasons than to clocks and schedules. He found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't since before the war. Dr. Hayes spent his time with the tribal healers, comparing medical knowledge. Isaiah worked with the blacksmith, learning techniques that predated European metalworking. Rosa helped with cooking, her Spanish mixing easily with Apache words, creating a hybrid language of practical women everywhere. And Ezekiel watched Ayanna transform. Each day she seemed more solid, more present. The hunted look faded from her eyes. She laughed more, spoke Apache more, moved with a grace that had been beaten out of her by 5 years of trying to be acceptable to people who would never accept her. On the third night, there was drumming, dancing, celebration of something Ezekiel didn't understand but appreciated anyway. The fire leapt high, shadows dancing. Ayanna danced with the other women, her movements tentative at first, then growing more confident. Ezekiel sat with Red Skywalker, watching. "You love her," the old man said. It wasn't a question. "I barely know her." Knowing and loving are not the same. Sometimes the heart knows before the mind understands. Ezekiel didn't know how to respond to that. So he said nothing. Red Skywalker continued. "You are a man who has spent many years alone, running from the darkness inside you. But darkness cannot be outrun. It can only be faced, accepted, integrated. You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am." Red Skywalker's face was distant, remembering. "I watched my people hunted, killed, forced onto this land that is not our ancestral home. I could have let that darkness consume me. Many did. But I chose differently. I chose to carry my people forward, to help them adapt without losing who they are. It's not the same, no, but all wounds are the same in one way. They either destroy you or make you stronger. There is no middle ground." The fire crackled, the drums beat. Ayanna spun, laughing, her face alive with joy. "She will need strength for what comes next." Red Skywalker said quietly. Victoria's trial. Rebuilding her life. Facing a town that will never fully accept her. Can you give her that strength? I can stand beside her while she finds her own. That is all anyone can do. The moment was broken by the sound of gunfire. 3 shots, rapid, from the edge of the reservation. The drumming stopped. Warriors grabbed weapons. Women pulled children close. Ezekiel was on his feet, rifle in hand before conscious thought. Red Skywalker barked orders in Apache. Men scattered to defensive positions. Riders, someone shouted. 10, maybe 12. Coming fast. Silas Cobb. It had to be. Victoria's hired gun. Come to finish what she started. Ayanna appeared at Ezekiel's side, her face pale but determined. It's her, isn't it? Victoria sent them. Probably. Get behind me. No. This is my fight too. You don't have a weapon. One of the warriors pressed a rifle into her hands. Now she does. The riders appeared out of the darkness like ghosts. 12 men, heavily armed, faces wrapped against the cold. They stopped at the edge of the firelight, just beyond easy shooting range. One man rode forward, tall, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much death and enjoyed it. This would be Cobb. "We don't want trouble with you people," he called out. "Just want the half-breed girl. Hand her over and we ride out peaceful." Red Skywalker stepped into the light. "You are on Apache land. You have no authority here. Got all the authority I need right here." Cobb patted his rifle. "Mrs. Ashford Redfeather is willing to pay good money for her stepdaughter's return, dead or alive, preferably dead. Mrs. Ashford Redfeather is in jail awaiting trial for attempted murder, which is why she needs the girl gone before the trial starts. Dead women can't testify. There was a terrible logic to it. If Ayanna died now, the case against Victoria fell apart. It became one woman's word with no victim to contradict it. Victoria might actually walk free. "You're not taking her," Ezekiel said, stepping forward. Cobb's eyes found him. "The Mountain Man. Heard about you. Big hero saving the helpless girl." His smile was cruel. "Hate to break it to you, but heroism don't stop bullets. Neither does talking. Fire if you're going to fire. Otherwise, ride out while you still can." Cobb's hand moved toward his gun. Red Skywalker spoke, sharp and commanding. Warriors appeared from the shadows, 20 of them at least, all armed, all deadly silent. Cobb froze. His men shifted nervously. "You are outnumbered," Red Skywalker said calmly. "You are outmatched, and you are on land where you do not belong. Leave now. Do not return. If you do, we will not show mercy." The standoff lasted an eternity, compressed into seconds. Cobb calculating odds, weighing money against survival. Finally, he spat in the dirt. "This ain't over." "Yes," Red Skywalker said quietly. "It is." Cobb and his men wheeled their horses and disappeared into the night. But Ezekiel knew the old man was wrong. It wasn't over. Men like Cobb didn't give up when the odds turned against them. They just waited for better odds. "We need to end this," he said. "Victoria has to stand trial. Soon. Before she can send more men." Agreed. Red Skywalker looked at Ayanna. "Tomorrow, we ride to Prescott. All of us. We will stand with you when you face your enemy in court. We will show the white people that you are not alone, that you have family, that you have strength." Ayanna's eyes filled with tears. "Grandfather, you don't have to." "Yes," he interrupted gently. "I do. Because I failed you once. I will not fail you again." That night, Ayanna and Ezekiel sat together outside the wickiup, wrapped in blankets against the cold. The stars wheeled overhead in patterns older than memory. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for saving my life, for believing me, for bringing me here. You saved yourself. I just gave you a ride." She laughed. "You're terrible at accepting gratitude. Never had much practice." They sat in comfortable silence. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called. Another answered. "What will you do after?" Ayanna asked. After the trial, after everything is settled, go back to my cabin, I suppose. Back to my quiet life. Will it still be quiet, now that you're involved in the world again? Probably not. He looked at her. What about you? I don't know. The house is mine now, the land, but I can't live there. Not after everything that happened. Too many ghosts. You could build something new. Different house. Fresh start. Maybe. She pulled the blanket tighter. Or maybe I sell it all. Use the money to start over somewhere else. Somewhere people don't know me as the half-breed girl with the evil stepmother. Running again? She flinched. Is that what you think I'm doing? I think you're afraid. And I think fear makes us all run sometimes. But I also think you're stronger than you know. Strong enough to face whatever comes next. Ayanna looked up at the stars. My mother used to say that sometimes darkness teaches us to value the light. I spent 5 years in darkness. Maybe it's time to find out what light looks like. Ezekiel didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Some truths had to be lived, not spoken. Tomorrow they would ride to Prescott. Tomorrow Victoria would face justice. Tomorrow the future would begin, uncertain and dangerous and full of possibility. But tonight, under the ancient stars, 2 damaged people sat together in silence. Not alone. Never alone again. And for now, that was enough. Dawn broke cold and clear over the Apache reservation. Ezekiel woke to find the camp already stirring. Warriors checking weapons, women packing supplies, children running between wiki-ups with the boundless energy of youth. Everyone preparing for the journey to Prescott. Red Sky Walker stood at the center of it all, directing with quiet authority. He caught Ezekiel's eye and nodded. Today we ride. Today my granddaughter faces her enemy. Today justice will be served. Ezekiel hoped the old man was right, but he'd seen enough of the world to know that justice and the law were not always the same thing. Ayanna emerged from the women's wiki-up dressed in a combination that straddled both her worlds. Traditional Apache dress underneath, but covered with a practical riding coat. Her hair was braided Apache style, but she wore a hat against the sun. She was done hiding who she was, done trying to be only one thing. She caught him watching and smiled. How do I look? Like someone who knows exactly who she is. I'm not sure that's true yet, but I'm learning. That's all anyone can do. They rode out an hour later. 20 Apache warriors led by Red Sky Walker. Ayanna, Ezekiel, Dr. Hayes, Isaiah, and Rosa. 27 people total, a show of force and solidarity that would make the people of Prescott take notice. The journey took 4 hours, long enough for Ezekiel to think too much about what might go wrong. Victoria had money, influence, connections. She'd already tried once to have Ayanna killed. What would stop her from trying again? Marshal Cooper met them at the edge of town. His face was grim. We've got problems. Victoria's lawyer Pemberton filed an emergency appeal. Claims the hearing was invalid because Victoria wasn't given adequate time to prepare her defense. But we've got an ace. Silas Cobb is willing to testify. Man's terrified of hanging. He'll tell the court everything Victoria paid him to do in exchange for a lighter sentence. Can he do that? Ayanna's voice was tight with worry. He can try. Judge Morrison denied it, but Pemberton's made noise about taking it to the Territorial Supreme Court. Could delay things for months. Months. Ezekiel felt the weight of that word. Months of Ayanna in danger. Months of Victoria pulling strings from her jail cell. Months of uncertainty. There's more. The marshal shifted uncomfortably. Someone tried to burn down the courthouse last night, the room where we're keeping the evidence. The original will, the ledgers, all of it. Tried? Deputy Carson was sleeping in the office. Scared them off. Victoria's got resources we haven't even seen yet. Then we move up the trial. Red Sky Walker's voice cut through the worry like a knife. Today. Tomorrow at latest. Before she can destroy more evidence or send more hired killers. It doesn't work that way. The law requires proper procedure, time for both sides to prepare. The law. Red Skywalker's voice was heavy with centuries of broken treaties and promises. The white man's law has never worked for my people. Why should it work for my granddaughter? Because it's all we have, Ayanna said quietly. Because if we don't use the law, we're no better than Victoria. She used violence and deceit. We have to use truth and justice, even if it takes longer, even if it's harder. Red Skywalker looked at his granddaughter with something like pride. You are wise beyond your years, like your mother. I just want this to be over. Soon, the old man promised. Very soon. They entered Prescott to find half the town gathered in the streets. Word had spread about the Apache warriors riding in. Some people looked frightened, others curious, a few angry. Ezekiel positioned himself close to Ayanna, hand near his rifle. Isaiah rode on her other side, equally alert. The Apache warriors formed a loose protective circle, their presence both reassuring and intimidating. At the jail, Marshal Cooper led them inside. Victoria sat in her cell, no longer the refined lady. Her hair was unkempt, her dress stained, her eyes wild with barely contained fury. When she saw Ayanna, she lunged at the bars. You! This is all your fault. If you just died like you were supposed to, none of this would be happening. Step back from the bars, Mrs. Ashford Redfeather. The marshal's hand went to his gun. Victoria ignored him, her attention fixed on Ayanna. Do you know what you've cost me? Everything. My reputation, my freedom, my future. All because you couldn't have the decency to freeze to death. You tried to murder me. Ayanna's voice was steady. Whatever you've lost, you brought on yourself. Murder? I was doing you a favor. You're a half-breed mongrel who would never amount to anything. At least in death you'd have been free of the shame of your existence. The words hung in the air, ugly and raw. Several people in the room gasped. Even Pemberton, Victoria's lawyer, looked uncomfortable. I think, Judge Morrison said from the doorway, that we've heard enough. He'd been standing there watching, his face like stone. Mrs. Ashford Redfeather, you've just confessed to attempted murder in front of a dozen witnesses. Your trial is now a formality. Victoria's face went white, then red. I was upset. I didn't mean. You meant every word. The judge turned to Marshal Cooper. Trial begins tomorrow at 9. Make sure your prisoner understands the gravity of her situation. As they led Victoria away, still screaming, Ezekiel felt some of the tension drain from his shoulders. It wasn't over yet, but they'd won a crucial battle. Outside, more trouble was brewing. A group of men had gathered near the church. Ezekiel recognized a few of them. Ranchers, businessmen, the kind who didn't like change or complications. One of them, a thick-necked man named Garrett, stepped forward. We don't want trouble. But we don't want a war party camping in our town, neither. We're not a war party. Red Skywalker's voice was calm. We're family, here to support one of our own. You're Indians on our land. That's trouble enough. This was our land long before it was yours. But we're not here to argue history. We're here to see justice done. Then we leave. Justice for a half-breed who should have stayed where she belonged? Garrett spat in the dirt. Her kind brings nothing but problems. Isaiah stepped forward, his blacksmith's muscles bunching. You want to say that again? Easy. Ezekiel put a hand on his friend's arm. These men are scared. Scared people say stupid things. We're not scared, Garrett blustered. We're practical. Girl's got Apache blood. That makes her dangerous. I've got Apache blood too. Ayanna's voice cut through the tension. Does that make me dangerous? Or does it just make me different? And since when is different the same as dangerous? Garrett opened his mouth, closed it. He had no good answer. Reverend Miller pushed through the crowd. Enough. This is not who we are, not who we should be. He looked around at his congregation. Ayanna Redfeather is a member of this community, has been her whole life. The only thing that's changed is that we now see how badly we've treated her, how badly we've allowed her to be treated. Some people looked ashamed, others defensive, but the immediate tension eased. "Come." Red Skywalker touched Ayanna's arm gently. "We'll make camp outside town. Give these people space to adjust." "You're welcome at my forge," Isaiah said. "Not much room, but it's warm and safe. Thank you. But my grandfather is right. Better to keep some distance. For now." They made camp a mile from town, near a stream that cut through a stand of cottonwoods. The warriors set up wickiups with practiced efficiency. Within an hour they had a functional village complete with cook fires and posted sentries. Ezekiel found Ayanna sitting by the stream, staring at the water. He sat beside her without speaking. Sometimes silence was the best conversation. After a while she said, "Do you think it will always be like this? People looking at me like I'm something other? Something less? Honestly? Probably. Some people, anyway. But that says more about them than about you. That's what my mother used to say." She pulled her knees up to her chest. "She told me once that she chose to love my father even though she knew it would make her an outcast in both worlds. She said love was worth that price." "Was it?" "I think so. She was happy with him. Happier than she'd ever been on the reservation. And he was happy with her. They created something new. Something that was both Apache and white, but also neither. Just theirs." "And you?" "I don't know yet. I'm still figuring out what's mine." "You will. You're stronger than your mother. Stronger than your father. You've survived things that would have broken most people." She looked at him then. Really looked. "What about you? What are you figuring out? Whether I can stop running. Whether I can face what I saw during the war and still find a way to live with it." He paused. "You've helped with that. More than you know." "How?" "By showing me that hiding doesn't heal anything. That the only way forward is through." They sat together as the sun set, turning the sky orange and red and purple. Somewhere in the distance a warrior played a flute, the notes melancholy and beautiful. That night the camp was attacked. It happened fast. Too fast. Men on horseback, torches blazing, guns firing. Silas Cobb had returned with reinforcements. 20 men this time. Maybe more. Ezekiel rolled out of his blankets, rifle in hand. Around him, Apache warriors were already moving, deadly efficient. Return fire crackled through the night. Men screamed. Horses whinnied in terror. "Ayanna!" He couldn't see her in the chaos. "Ayanna! Here!" She emerged from behind a cottonwood, rifle raised. "I'm here!" They fought back to back, firing methodically at the dark shapes circling the camp. Isaiah was nearby, using his blacksmith's hammer as effectively as any gun. Dr. Hayes crouched behind a wagon, reloading weapons for the warriors. Rosa appeared with a hunting knife, her face fierce. "No one attacks my family and lives." The fight was brutal but brief. Cobb's men hadn't expected such fierce resistance. Within minutes, 8 were down, 5 captured, the rest fleeing into the darkness. Cobb himself lay wounded near the stream, clutching his side. Red Skywalker stood over him, rifle pointed at his head. "Why?" The old man's voice was cold. "Why attack us? Your employer is finished. She has no money to pay you." Cobb coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Already paid. Half up front. She wanted the girl dead before the trial. Said she'd rather hang than watch that half-breed inherit what should have been hers. Then you've failed, and your life is forfeit." "Wait." Ezekiel stepped forward. "Let the law handle him. Let him testify against Victoria. Make her crimes public beyond any doubt." Red Skywalker's finger tightened on the trigger. Then slowly he lowered the rifle. "You are merciful. More merciful than I would be. Not mercy. Strategy. A dead man can't talk. A living one can bury Victoria so deep she'll never see daylight again." Marshal Cooper arrived with his deputies an hour later, summoned by a rider Red Skywalker had sent. He took custody of Cobb and the other prisoners, his face grim. "This changes everything. With Cobb's testimony, Victoria's going away for life. Maybe hanging. She tried to hire a massacre. The trial is tomorrow. Ayanna's voice was tired but determined. Let's finish this. The morning of the trial dawned gray and cold. The whole town turned out, packing the church beyond capacity. People stood outside, craning to hear through open windows. Victoria was brought in chains, flanked by deputies. She looked small, diminished. Nothing like the imposing woman who'd terrorized Ayanna for 5 years. Her eyes were dull, defeated. She knew she'd lost. Judge Morrison called the court to order. The case of the Territory of Arizona versus Victoria Ashford Redfeather. Charges of fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. How does the defendant plead? Pemberton stood reluctantly. Not guilty, Your Honor. The judge raised an eyebrow. Despite your client's confession yesterday? My client was under extreme emotional distress. Her words should not be taken as admission of guilt. Then let's hear the evidence. For the next 4 hours, witness after witness took the stand. Dr. Hayes testified about the will, about William Redfeather's true intentions. Marshal Cooper presented the forged document, pointing out the impossible date. Maria, the housekeeper, testified about the abuse she'd witnessed. Other servants came forward, their testimony painting a picture of systematic cruelty. Then Silas Cobb took the stand. Wounded but alive, he testified in exchange for a reduced sentence. He described in detail Victoria's instructions. Kill the girl, make it look like an accident, whatever it takes. Finally, Ayanna testified. She spoke clearly, without emotion, recounting 5 years of abuse. The missed meals, the locked cellar, the constant degradation, and finally, the night Victoria threw her out into the blizzard. When she finished, the church was silent. Even those who'd been skeptical couldn't deny the truth anymore. Victoria's defense was weak. Pemberton argued emotional instability, claimed she'd been driven mad by grief over her husband's death, but no one was buying it. The evidence was too damning, the witnesses too credible. Judge Morrison didn't even need to leave the room to deliberate. Victoria Ashford Redfeather, on the charges of fraud and embezzlement, I find you guilty. On the charge of attempted murder, I find you guilty. He paused. Normally I would wait to pass sentence, but in this case, the crimes are so heinous, the evidence so clear, that I see no reason to delay. You are hereby sentenced to 20 years hard labor at Yuma Territorial Prison. Not hanging then. Ezekiel felt both relief and disappointment. Part of him wanted harsher justice. But 20 years in Yuma was almost worse than death. The prison was a hellhole in the desert where most inmates didn't survive their first 5 years. Victoria showed no reaction. She simply stared at nothing, already gone in some fundamental way. As they led her out, she stopped in front of Ayanna one last time. You think you've won, but you'll never belong. Half-breeds never do. Ayanna met her eyes without flinching. I don't need to belong anywhere except to myself. That's something you never understood. Victoria laughed, bitter and broken, as the deputies took her away. Outside the church, the town erupted in conversation. Some people congratulated Ayanna. Others avoided her eyes, ashamed of their complicity in her suffering. The Apache warriors stood in stoic silence, their presence a reminder that she wasn't alone. It's done, Red Sky Walker said quietly. Justice has been served. Not quite. Judge Morrison approached, documents in hand. Miss Redfeather, there's the matter of the estate. The 600 acres of land, the house, all financial assets. They're legally yours. But there are complications. What kind of complications? Your stepmother entered into contracts during her guardianship. Some will be honored, some won't. It will take time to sort out. I'm appointing Dr. Hayes as temporary administrator until everything's resolved. Probably 6 months to a year. Ayanna nodded. That's fine. I'm not ready to deal with any of it yet anyway. There's also the matter of where you'll live. The judge looked uncomfortable. The house is yours, but I understand you don't want to return there. No. Too many ghosts. Then you'll need to make arrangements. Find somewhere safe while the estate is settled." "She can stay at my cabin," Ezekiel said before thinking it through. "It's not much, but it's safe. And Rosa can chaperone, keep things proper." The judge considered. "That's acceptable. Temporary arrangement until Miss Redfeather decides what she wants to do. What about the land?" Ayanna looked at the documents. "The 600 acres. What should I do with it?" "That's your decision. You could sell it, lease it, develop it, or simply hold on to it. The Southern Pacific Railway is still interested in purchasing for their rail line. They've offered $50,000. $50,000. It was a fortune. Enough to start over anywhere, be anyone. But Ayanna shook her head. "Not yet. I need to think, need to figure out what my father would have wanted." "Take your time," the judge said kindly. "The land isn't going anywhere." The crowd began to disperse. The Apache warriors prepared to return to the reservation. Red Skywalker pulled Ayanna aside for a private conversation. Ezekiel couldn't hear the words, but he saw the old man's hand on his granddaughter's shoulder, saw Ayanna nod, saw something pass between them that looked like understanding. When she returned, her eyes were bright but dry. "Grandfather says I'm welcome at the reservation any time, that I have a place with my mother's people, but he also says I need to find my own path, not his, not my father's, mine. Smart man. He also said you're welcome too, that you've earned the right to call yourself friend to the Apache. High praise." "I know." She smiled. "You've changed my life, Ezekiel Thornwood. You know that? You found your courage when it mattered most. I was just there at the right time." "Stop saying that. You did more than that. You gave me hope when I had none, courage when I was terrified, a reason to keep fighting when all I wanted to do was give up." He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing, just stood beside her as the sun climbed higher and the day grew warmer and the future stretched out before them, uncertain but no longer frightening. The next weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Ayanna stayed at the cabin as planned, with Rosa maintaining propriety. She spent her days helping with chores, learning to track from Ezekiel, gradually finding comfort in the mountain solitude. But she also rode into Prescott regularly, working with Dr. Hayes to untangle Victoria's financial schemes. Slowly, the truth emerged. Victoria had embezzled nearly $30,000 over 5 years. She'd taken out loans against the property. She'd sold off assets that weren't hers to sell. The estate was a mess. But underneath the mess was solid value. The land alone was worth the $50,000 the railway offered. The house, once cleaned and repaired, could sell for another $5,000. There were investments, bank accounts, property in Tucson that Victoria had purchased with stolen funds. When everything was settled, Ayanna would be wealthy. Not rich by Boston standards, but comfortable by any measure. One evening, sitting by the cabin fire, she broached the subject that had been hanging between them for weeks. "I've been thinking about the land. And I can't keep it all. It's too much for one person, and too many memories." She stirred the fire absently. "But I can't sell it all either. It was my father's legacy, my mother's, even mine in a way." "What are you thinking?" "I want to donate 100 acres to the Apache reservation. Good land, with water rights. My grandfather's people need it. That's generous." "It's right. The rest, I'll sell. 50,000 from the railway. Another 20,000 for the remaining land and property. That gives me $70,000. More money than I could spend in a lifetime." "What will you do with it?" She looked at him directly. "I want to build something. A school maybe, or a community center. Something that helps people like me. People caught between two worlds. Where children can learn both Apache and English. Where traditions are preserved but adaptation is encouraged. A bridge between cultures." It was a beautiful dream. Ambitious. Maybe impossible. But beautiful nonetheless. "You'll need help with something like that." "I know." She paused. "I was hoping you'd consider being part of it." "Me? I'm a hermit. I don't know anything about building schools or communities. You know about survival. about healing, about finding purpose after losing it. Those are the things people need to learn. Not from books, from someone who's lived it. He wanted to say yes, but 7 years of isolation didn't disappear overnight. I don't know if I'm ready. That's all right. Neither am I. But maybe we can figure it out together. The conversation stayed with him for days, building something, creating instead of hiding. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. 3 months after the trial. Thought Miss Redfeather should know. They told Ayanna that evening. She received the news in silence, staring into the fire for a long time. "How do you feel?" Rosa asked gently. "I don't know. Empty, maybe. I thought I'd feel relief or closure or something, but I just feel sad." Sad? For what she could have been. She was smart, capable, could have done so much good, but she chose cruelty instead, chose greed, and it destroyed her. You know what's strange? Part of me wanted her to suffer for years, to feel every moment of what she put me through. But another part remembers those first 6 months after Papa died, when she was kind, when I thought maybe she really did care. I grieve for that woman, even though I know now she never truly existed. Does that make me weak? That's wisdom, child. Red Skywalker had ridden up that day for a visit. To see someone's potential, even after they've hurt you. That is the mark of a healer. I'm not a healer. Not yet. But you could be. With Victoria's death came a strange sense of finality. The past was truly past. Now Ayanna could focus on the future. On a clear spring day, 6 months after the trial, Ayanna made her decision. She stood on the land her father had built, looking at the house that held so many painful memories. Rosa, Ezekiel, Dr. Hayes, Isaiah, and Red Skywalker stood with her. "I'm not going to burn it down," she said. "That would be satisfying, but wasteful. Instead, I'm going to transform it. This house will become the Apache Cultural Center, a place where both peoples can learn from each other, where my mother's culture is honored and my father's legacy is preserved." She turned to face them. "I'll use the money from the land sales to endow it, to hire teachers, to buy books and supplies, to make it free for anyone who wants to learn." "It's a good dream," Dr. Hayes said. "Your father would be proud. I'm going to build a new house, smaller, on the western edge of the property, near the mountains. Something that's mine. Not my father's. Not Victoria's. Mine. Will you build it alone?" Ezekiel kept his voice neutral. She looked at him, a small smile playing at her lips. "I was hoping I might have help, if a certain mountain man was willing to stop hiding long enough to build something permanent. Is that a proposal? Maybe. Is that an acceptance? Maybe." Rosa laughed. You too. Just say what you mean." "All right." Ayanna turned to face Ezekiel fully. "Ezekiel Thornwood, I'm asking you to help me build a life. Not just a house. A life. Together. As partners. As equals. With no promises, except to face whatever comes honestly and together." It wasn't a conventional proposal. But then, they weren't conventional people. He took her hands in his. "Ayanna Redfeather, I accept. On one condition." "What condition?" "You stop calling yourself a half-breed. You're not half of anything. You're whole, complete, exactly who you're supposed to be." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Deal." Red Skywalker stepped forward. In Apache tradition, marriage is not one ceremony but many. A joining that happens over time, through shared work and shared life. He looked at them both. "You have already begun this joining. Now you must continue it. Build your house, build your center, build your life. The ceremony will follow when the time is right." "How will we know when the time is right?" Ayanna asked. "You will know. Trust in that." They broke ground on the new house the next week. It would take months to complete, maybe longer. But they had time. They had help. Isaiah contributed metalwork. Dr. Hayes drew up plans. Rosa supervised the domestic arrangements. Red Sky Walker sent warriors to help with the heavy lifting. And slowly, board by board, stone by stone, the house took shape. A blend of styles, Apache and pioneer, traditional and modern, uniquely theirs. The Cultural Center opened 6 months later. The old Red Feather house, cleaned and repainted, transformed. One wing held Apache artifacts, traditional clothing, weapons, tools. The other held books, maps, documents of settlement and exploration. In the center, a large room where both communities could gather to learn from each other. The opening was attended by hundreds, townspeople from Prescott, Apache from the reservation. Even the territorial governor sent a representative. It was, everyone agreed, something new, something important. A bridge built where only walls had stood before. Ayanna spoke at the ceremony, her voice clear and strong. This center honors two people, my mother Nasha, who taught me strength, and my father William, who taught me compassion. But mostly, it honors a simple truth, that being different is not the same as being less, that our diversity is our strength, that we are all simply human, trying to find our way. The applause was thunderous. A year after the trial, their house was finished. Small but beautiful, perched on the edge of the property with views of the mountains. A place of peace and safety, built with their own hands. They married in the Apache tradition, at sunrise, with Red Sky Walker officiating. No fancy dress, no church, just two people making promises to each other under an endless sky. Ezekiel promised to honor her, to stand beside her, to never let her face the cold alone. Ayanna promised to trust him, to build with him, to remember that she was enough exactly as she was. They sealed their vows with clasped hands and shared breath, the ancient way, as the sun rose over the mountains and painted the world in gold. Rosa cried. Dr. Hayes beamed. Isaiah whistled. Red Sky Walker nodded approval. And in that moment, surrounded by family chosen and found, Ayanna felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt home. 5 years later, Ayanna stood in the Cultural Center, surrounded by children, Apache and white, all learning together. She was teaching them about medicinal plants, showing them how to identify healing herbs, how to prepare them, how to respect the land that provided them. One little girl, maybe 7 years old, raised her hand. Miss Ayanna, why do you know both Apache ways and white ways? Because I'm both, Ayanna said simply. And that's not a weakness. It's a strength. I can move between worlds. I can help them understand each other, just like you can. The girl beamed, understanding something fundamental. After class, Ayanna walked home. The path was familiar now, worn smooth by daily passage. She could see their house in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney. Ezekiel would be there, probably working on some repair. He was always fixing something, improving something, building. They had a daughter now, little Nasha, named for her grandmother, 3 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's brown eyes. A perfect blend, like the house they lived in, like the life they'd built. As Ayanna approached, she saw Ezekiel on the porch, Nasha riding on his shoulders. The girl was laughing, that pure, unbridled joy that only children possess. Ezekiel looked up, saw his wife, and smiled. That smile still did things to her heart, even after 5 years. "Mama," Nasha waved enthusiastically, "Papa's teaching me to track." "Is he now?" Showed her how to read deer prints. Ezekiel lifted the girl down. "She's a natural. She's only 3 years old." "So?" "I started younger. And she's got Apache blood. Natural trackers, her mother's people. You grew up in the wilderness, and she's growing up between worlds. Best of both." It was true. Their daughter would never have to choose between Apache and white. She would never be told she was less because of her mixed blood. The Cultural Center, the community they'd built, would ensure that. "Even when I'm difficult?" "Especially then." Keeps life interesting." She leaned against him, comfortable in the silence that followed. They'd been through so much. The trial, Victoria's death, the years of building and establishing the center, the challenges of marriage and parenthood. But they'd come through it all stronger, not unscathed. Both still carried scars. Ayanna still had nightmares sometimes about that night in the snow. Ezekiel still woke in cold sweats, reliving the war. But they faced those demons together. And together, they were manageable. Red Sky Walker visited the next day. He was 73 now, moving slower but still sharp as ever. He sat by their fire, accepted Rosa's food gratefully, and played with his great-granddaughter until the child wore him out. "You've done well," he told Ayanna later when they were alone. "Your mother would be proud. Your father, too." "I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I've honored their memory properly." "You honor them by living fully, by refusing to be diminished, by building something that helps others. That is the greatest honor." "Thank you, grandfather." He smiled, reached out to touch her face gently. "You are no longer the frightened girl who came to the reservation seeking shelter. You are a woman of strength, a leader, a bridge between peoples. That is who you were always meant to be. It took me a long time to see it. The best journeys take time. Quick transformations are rarely lasting." A commotion outside interrupted them. Voices raised, someone crying. They hurried out to find a young woman, maybe 19, standing in their yard. She was bruised, her clothing torn, her face swollen from crying. "Please," she said when she saw Ayanna, "I heard about you, about what you survived. I need help. My husband, he beats me, and when I try to leave, he threatens to kill my family, and I don't know what to do, and everyone says I should just endure it, but I can't anymore. I just can't." Ayanna looked at this girl and saw herself 6 years ago, desperate, terrified, certain there was no way out. She stepped forward and took the girl's hands. "You're safe now. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone anymore." The girl collapsed into sobs, years of held-back fear finally breaking free. Over the girl's head, Ayanna met Ezekiel's eyes. He nodded. They both knew what this meant. One case would become 2. 2 would become 10. They were establishing something larger than a cultural center. They were creating a refuge. It would mean more work, more complications, more involvement in the messy business of other people's lives. But looking at this girl who needed help, Ayanna knew there was no other choice. Some things were more important than peace and quiet. Some things were worth fighting for. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and red. Inside their house, people gathered. The battered girl, Rosa making food, Dr. Hayes arriving to treat the girl's injuries, Isaiah showing up with his wife, ready to help however they could. Their quiet life was over. Their meaningful life was just beginning. Ayanna stood on the porch one last time before going inside. She looked out over the land, her father's legacy, her mother's heritage, her daughter's future. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. Another answered. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods, carrying the smell of sage and pine. She thought about the girl she'd been, the one who'd clawed at a barn door with frozen fingers, the one who'd been told she was nothing, the one who'd almost given up. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who'd built a life of meaning, who'd faced her demons and won. A woman who was exactly who she was supposed to be, Apache and white, strong and gentle, scarred but healing, broken but rebuilt, whole. Ayanna smiled and went inside to help the next person who needed it, because that's what survivors did. They survived. And then they helped others survive too. The fire crackled, the voices rose and fell. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggle. But inside, there was warmth, there was safety, there was hope. And sometimes, hope was enough. Sometimes, It was everything. The end.